We'd like to welcome you again to another profoundly okay episode of VA Radio.
I like it. Nicely done.
Yeah, well, it took a couple of tries to get it out, but thought you might like that one.
We got there. That's the important thing.
Good. And if you had a ridiculous adjective to oversell the show, you can just file that one for next time.
Fair enough.
So,
it will be filed because I had one, fella.
I bet you did.
Yes, I did.
I'm just trying to make your life easy over here.
I appreciate that. You're cool like that.
Yeah, right on. So, as per usual, as we start these episodes of V8 Radio, which is a show that's about nonsense and cars, and sometimes a little bit more of one than the other, we like to kind of entice our listeners to stick around by throwing out a trivia question. And have you got one for this show?
I got one.
Oh,
I got one.
The look in the eye.
Are you ready?
I'll say yes, I'm ready. I don't know that I am, but
This one will probably you'll rattle it off in 2 seconds. You remember when Chrysler took over AMC, when Chrysler bought AMC?
without a doubt.
What year did that happen?
Chrysler bought AMC, I'm going to say in 1983. That's my guess.
1983.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Not a bad guess.
Yeah.
We'll find out later.
Well,
We'll find out later, Kevin, if you're right or not.
we had a fine AMC product right around that time period.
Yeah, there was a few.
Well, we owned one. My family had one.
Oh, your family did. What was that?
Yeah, we had a 1981 AMC Concorde DL wagon.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice car.
It was yellow with simulated wood grain and a tritone brown velour interior with that kind of it still had the 70s spacey egg-shaped seat styling, that AMC was known for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the Concorde was kind of the evolution of the Hornet, so
Right.
my dad affectionately called, even though it had nothing to do with color, but my dad called that car the Grape because it was a
Nice.
Concorde Grape, I guess.
Oh, right. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't understand that for years. So
My brother had an AMC product as well in the mid '80s. It was an '83 AMC Spirit. It was powder blue hatchback with a
Nice.
4-speed. Yeah, it was a kind of a cool car. So I'd steal it sometimes from him when he was out with his buddies. And of course, I didn't have a driver's license then. And
oh, good, yeah.
yeah, luckily I never smashed it up.
Well, around that time, the Spirit, wasn't there an AMX version of that? I think there was. I think in the early 80s they resurrected the AMX name, and it was like an all black Spirit.
Huh.
And that's, of course, the same time when they really got into four-wheel drive. So
Yeah, right, with the Eagle, right?
right, yeah.
Yeah,
We,
that was an interesting car.
In 1981, my dad decided it was time to buy a new car. And looking back, he was one of these guys who bought a brand new car every couple of years until they got married and started having a family. So I think his last new car was in 1964. He bought a 64 Dodge. And then from 64 on, he had used cars. And,
Okay.
he bought a house, and my sister was born, and I was born, and, blah, blah, blah. So by 81, I think he was finally ready to buy a new car. And I remember going all over town to the different dealers, and he was a police officer in town, so he knew all the dealers, and he knew all the salesmen, and he knew everybody. So
Sure.
it was just as much of a social event, I think, as it was a car buying exercise. But it was not how you do
Right.
it today, because there was no internet, there's no research, there's no, you still relied on brands,
Right.
I had one of those and I hated it, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the personal relationships of the different dealers that you went to. So we had been to, and this was all, middle class kind of stuff. So we weren't shopping for anything extravagant. Still had to be a family car, and they were leaning towards getting a wagon. And up until that point, he had been rotating through some Cadillacs, but they were like 8 or 10-year-old. You know, we had a 73 Sedan DeVille that had, 4 million miles on it, and all the paint was peeled off. And then he had a 66 before that, and a 67, all these beater Cads. And my mom is finally like, look, sure, it's a Cadillac, but I want something new and reliable. And so we went to the Mercury dealer and checked out the Mercury Marquis wagon, which at that point was like a Fairmont body style. It was a mid-size, not like a Grand Marquis, big one. It was just the Mercury Marquis, the littler one.
Right.
And and also the Zephyr, I think. We looked at those.
Right.
And she didn't like those. And we went to the Oldsmobile dealer and we looked at an Olds. It was probably a Cutlass Sierra front drive station wagon.
Okay.
And, smaller deal. And what she didn't like about that was kind of the Chevy Celebrity style,
Oh, yeah.
Mid-size. And she didn't like how the dashboard was very vertical and kind of a flat wall. It didn't have any contour to it. It was just a big straight across thing. She didn't like that. So then we actually stopped in at the local Cadillac dealership, probably just because we were in the neighborhood. Not that we're buying a Cadillac, but it was a car kind of day. And, I think he was asking one of his salesman buddies, what's decent around here. And he's like, well, right down the street is the Buick dealer. Maybe you want to go over there. So we go to the Buick dealer and looked at the Buick Century wagon, another little wagon, very similar to the Olds. Didn't really dig that.
Right.
And I said, next door is this AMC Jeep dealer. And the AMCs were not on anybody's radar whatsoever, but they had a giant lifted, like a CJ7 in the showroom. It was red, chrome wheels, mud tires, roll bar, KC highlights on top, winch, push bar, jerry cans on the back. I mean, this thing was killed. It was even pinstriped. So
oh, wow.
I'm guessing that this was either a last-ditch effort by this AMC dealer to try and get somebody in the door, or it was like, used but nice enough to be in the showroom with the new cars. And it was all dialed up. Right. So I'm like, Daddy, can we go look at this Jeep? And he's like, no, I don't want a damn Jeep. And I said, no, I just want to see it, because where I grew up, a lot of people didn't have Jeeps. And so we take a few minutes, and he's like, fine. So we go in there, and I'm kind of crawling all over this Jeep, and my mom looks across the showroom, and there it was. This yellow Concorde wagon. Sold.
Nice.
And that is how that happened.
Well done. Well done, Big Al.
Yeah. So it was an interesting, I guess I had something to do with the purchase, because they never would have gone there if it wasn't for that Jeep. Right. But it tells you, you got something good in the showroom. It'll drag people in. Yeah.
It brought you in the door and got you to buy a car. Got your dad to buy a car, so it did its job.
That's it. So there's a picture of that Concorde wagon on our website at vatvshow.com in the forum threads under the project vehicles that are individual of my 70 Buick Riv. I kind of articulate a little bit of that story.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
man. That's a great story and all, but you got a trivia question attached to all that, my man?
Is that what we're doing here? I thought this was story time. I do have a trivia question. Yes.
Well, right on.
All right. This is because I know how much of a Ford and Mustang and Shelby fan you are.
I know what FE means now.
Yes, you do. And FU, I think.
Yeah.
So on the Shelbys, where did the name GT350 originate?
I actually have heard this story before.
As you recall, the GT350 was debuted in '65, and it's a 289 cubic inch engine.
Right. From what I heard, it was maybe 350 steps from Carroll Shelby's office to his shop, and that's how he came up with the GT350.
Well, that's kind of a radical idea.
Isn't it though?
But is that your official?
Yeah, that's the only answer I have. So yeah.
Okay, so I'll write this down. 350 steps equals GT350. All right, we will file that away until the end of the episode.
Yeah. Right on.
Pending we have any other stories to tell in the middle.
Oh yeah, yeah. It'll be one or two maybe.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that was definitely a time warp to think about that AMC. So yeah, I'm sorry if I derailed completely, but man, that scratched part of my brain that I haven't been in quite a long time.
Well, you got to let it out sometimes.
Yeah. I remember being in high school. We had that car up until 87, I think. So
is that right?
I was getting my driver's license in the I don't know 88 or 89, and we still had that AMC, and it was like 2 years before I was going to get my license. So I was already kind of working my own man, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to get my license pretty soon. Maybe we should get some sway bars and some better suspension stuff for the wagon. And then he told me what FE means.
Sweet.
Yeah. A lot of memories with that silly car. We took that thing on a family vacation, the four of us, from Chicago to California, and drove across Death Valley and the whole thing in it's a straight six AMC Concord wagon. Did the whole Clarke Griswold deal, man. Piece of tape on the back seat, you don't cross to my side and you don't touch me and all that, man. I think
I know that tape.
Yeah. Well, it's summertime, and I've been thinking a lot of these, summer vacations and road trips and stuff, and trying to spend more time outside and do things outside instead of being, trapped at the desk or whatever, because we're kids, you got to run around all summer long to some degree and be outside a lot and everything. And, I miss that.
Yeah. Me too.
Adult responsibility thing really kind of blows sometimes.
I know it does. My kids are living the high life right now, but I'm not.
So what is the regimen of the kids these days on a summer day? That you let them do whatever they want, or your kids are probably in 9 different programs too, though, right? They got 58 things to do.
Well, my older one is in gymnastics, and she goes to gymnastics class once a week on Mondays. But during the week, they're home. They can do whatever they want, and they can go down to the clubhouse pool if they want and go swimming or hang out with their friends or get into all kinds of mischief.
There you go.
Luckily, they tend not to get into any real mischief, which is great.
Yeah.
So they're actually pretty decent kids. So I have to give it to them for that.
My summers were, on that same exact cross-country trip with that darn AMC wagon was my exposure to Cartoons magazine. Did you ever read Cartoons magazine as a kid?
I've seen it a few times when I was a kid, but I didn't really get it regularly.
Yeah, so Cartoons was a game changer for me, because growing up, I started reading Hot Rod like all of us, when I was in grade school or younger, and it was a gift from my aunt, a subscription to Hot Rod.
Cool.
And I remember reading the magazine and looking at the pictures and not really understanding anything, but it was cool to look at. Well, in 1983, I was 11, and we're on this cross-country trip, and I think we went to a Piggly Wiggly or some kind of grocery store in Colorado. Right. And on the newsstand is this thing called Cartoons, and it's this hand-drawn cartoon book. And I was never into comics, per se, because I was into cars, and comics normally don't get along. It's all superheroes and stuff.
Right.
And I start flipping through this, and I'm like, I got to have it. It was the October issue of 1983, and it was an interesting time period because that's when the new Corvette was coming out.
Oh, right.
So the C4 Corvette, which, there's another Corvette trivia question. There was no 83 Corvette, technically.
Yeah, oh, dude, I was close to asking you that. Yeah. But I said, nope, there's no way he's not going to know that.
Well, I got to learn all about that car because of of a couple of magazines. One was Motor Trend, did a huge thing on the '84 Corvette, and then I see this cartoons thing, and they got one on the cover, and there's a George Trosley. He's an artist who, if you saw his work, you'd recognize it immediately as stuff you've been seeing your whole life. But Trosley used to do a how to draw column in this magazine, and it was how to draw the new Corvette. So
sweet.
Now I'm on this road trip, and I got a box of crayons and markers and stuff, and now I got a magazine that's going to tell me how to draw this new Corvette. So I mean, I'm over the moon at this point, and I'm reading the stories because it's a lot of, you know, it's a cartoon book, so it's not articles, but it's all car related stuff, not tech articles, I should say. And when you first open it up, they got these two characters named Crash and Bernie, which was a play on Crash and Burn. And that was another George Trosley creation. And these were two guys who, you know, it's a comic, so it's not necessarily accurate to reality by any stretch. But these guys had the life. There's two dudes that live in an old wooden garage that's kind of situated at the back of a grass lot. There's no house. They live upstairs. And anything they want to happen in the bottom half of this garage can happen. So if there's a drag race on Friday, they can put a whole rail job together in 3 days with stuff laying around in the yard, go win the drag race, get the trophies, get the girls, and be heroes, you know? And it was just a cool thing to be a kid and go, hey, I understand that, you know. It wasn't how to pick a camshaft, but it was his stories.
Right.
So there was a handful of artists that I really like. George was one, a guy named Steve Austin, and not the $6 Million Man, you know, or the wrestler,
or the wrestler.
but Steve Austin was another guy who had a style and a humor that I really thought was pretty cool, and on and on. So I read that magazine and darn near tore it to shreds. I mean, I read it cover to cover 1 million times, and I think I still have it in a box over there. But when I got home, I couldn't find it because it wasn't carried where I lived. And I learned that it was bi-monthly. It was every 2 months a new copy would come out. And a couple of months went by, but sure enough, my local grocery store picked it up. And the interesting part about that is they didn't do subscriptions at that point. It was newsstand only. And it was published by none other than Peterson Publishing. So the same group that did Hot Rod did cartoons. And later in life, as I learned, you know, and I started to work at Hot Rod, I learned that was part of Robert Peterson's strategy of cradle to grave marketing. Hook them as a kid.
I see.
You know, grow them out of cartoons into, you know, maybe Carcraft magazine, and then get them into Hot Rod, and then get them into Motor Trend when they got a family, and then the other magazines, and then diverse interests of hunting and fishing, and you have a lifelong customer. So it worked. You know?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
you know, still talking about that. So I bought every one that I could, and probably all the way up into high school, I could still get them. And by that point, I had outgrown, you know, the subject matter. It wasn't, you know, it was targeted towards a younger audience, and by that point, I was reading Carcraft and Hot Rod. But I still always thought they were kind of neat. And I always think of that as a summertime thing, even though I got them year round. But I was exposed to that in the summertime, and I remember drawing pictures and doing all this stuff. And interestingly, by the time I got to L.A., Cartoons magazine it was done being published in about 91, I think. It went away. They just realized it was not profitable. There wasn't any advertising in it. It was just, you know, for fun, basically.
Right.
But the guys at Hot Rod Magazine and I, when I was doing the TV show, we had a big conversation about Cartoons Magazine. And it turns out that David Freiberger grew up reading Cartoons Magazine, and so did Rob Kinnan, and some of the other guys. Ro McGonigal, who was editor at the time, knew all the guys that wrote the magazine, and Steve Mignante collected, Cartoons Magazine. So I said, you know,
that's cool.
We need to do something with this. So the magazine Cartoons was started in back in '59, I believe, by a guy named Pete Millar, and Pete lived in Palos Verdes, California, so we did a TV episode and interviewed him. So I got to meet the guy. and
Nice.
see some of his sketches and artwork, and had a great interview with him. And the next one was Steve Austin, that other artist I really liked. He lived up in outside of Bakersfield in California, so grabbed a camera and trucked up there and interviewed him in his own little studio. And
Nice.
and and it was really, really cool. This is like, in 2001 or so, or 2002, right around then. And when we finished up the interview with Steve Austin, he's like, "Well, hey, let me show you something." And hanging on my wall here in my garage is the original artwork from one of the stories from a cartoons magazine. And what they would do is they would hand draw this thing, and then it gets photographed and turned into a magazine print. And he hands me this thing and signs it. And he said, "Here, you can have this." And I've got the magazine that this story was in. And I know this story vividly.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it was really, really wild. So
that's radical, man.
So it's framed on the wall here. And he was a super cool guy. And George Trosley, unfortunately, lived in Pennsylvania, and we didn't have the budget to fly out there to do an interview with him. So we did a phone interview. And I conducted that whole thing. I hired a local camera crew to go to his house, and they did the video side, and I interviewed him over the phone. And he and I have been, I don't want to say we're great buddies, but we interact every once in a while. And a handful of the other artists I was able to, connect with on Facebook and whatnot. And then a year and a half ago, a guy out of Canada buys the cartoon's name and starts printing the magazine again.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get Cartoons Magazine all over again. And it's the same logo and it's the same kind of themes, but it's interesting to see how far it's come, because now it's all drawn digitally, and it's using Illustrator or Photoshop or that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have the hand-drawn cheap newsprint kind of feel that it used to, but it exists again, So, and Mark, I think his last name is Matho, the guy that created that. He and I have been discussing doing an interview, probably in this very venue, as a guest about cartoons and what that's all about.
Right
so I got a chance to talk to him a couple times. So yeah, totally wild.
Good. All right, man, we got things happening here.
Yeah. All this. I'm going to have crazy dreams tonight, man. You just took me back all the way down.
All from one trivia question.
Yeah, no kidding.
I dig it.
Well, and then earlier today, on our VATV website, vatvshow.com, on the homepage, I don't know if you had a chance to see this or not, but I found one of my all-time favorite TV cartoons, which is called One Cab's Family. It's a Tex Avery cartoon from 1952, where the mom and dad are the cab and the station wagon, and they have a little baby who's a little taxi cab. And the moral of the story is the kid wants to be a hot rod, so he beefs himself up with a flathead and a foxtail, and he goes out and almost gets his old man killed. You remember that? I remember watching this.
No, what have I been living?
Oh,
Jeez.
yeah, man. Again, and I did not plan this. Earlier, you and I, it may not seem obvious, but we don't discuss these shows before we start rolling.
for as tight as they are and as well put together, this is all freeform, people.
Correct, yes. I had no idea that we would go this direction, but I found that cartoon in its entirety, and it's on the vatvshow.com homepage, and it's awesome. It is so well done, and it's interesting because it is a total precursor to Pixar's Cars, because they have eyes in the windshield the same way, and the cars have talking personalities and everything, and it's killer. So if you get a chance, go over to the vatvshow.com website and check that one out, because I'm sure you're gonna recognize it. You know, oh, I remember this, and there you go. And then it'll happen to you, my friend, and you'll have this big.
Yeah, then I'll just be thinking about it all night. Why did he say that?
That's right.
Oh man. So you were. Let's see. You've been going to some shows lately. But one that we haven't gone to that's a really cool one is that Goodguys show.
Oh, huge! Columbus.
We just had one in Columbus. Right. What? They're celebrating their 20th year this year for that show.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, so I have not. I have to confess, I haven't been to Goodguys Columbus in many years. I've been to some of the other Columbus shows, and I'm sure, no doubt, you're from Ohio originally, right? Did you ever go to the Super Nats or any of the big Ohio shows there?
No, you know what? I haven't. I grew up in Ohio. I spent my formative years there, but I left. I moved to Texas in my mid sophomore year, like 1985, and the only time I was back living is when I got out of the Air Force in '91, and I was just there for 6 months, and then I moved out here to Illinois. So I've been to Illinois since summer of '92. And so I never went to any of those big Ohio shows. Which I mean, I'd love to go to that Ames show in Norwalk. That would be a great one. I'd love to go to a Good Guy show in Columbus. That would be a great one too. But no, I've been missing them all these years.
Yeah,
kind of a bummer.
Well, I mean, you can't be everywhere, and that's part of the deal.
Right.
We're so lucky that there is so much going on. When I was at DuQuoin a couple weeks ago for the Street Machine Nats, there was a couple people commenting. They're like, "Yeah, there needs to be more vendors here. There used to be more vendors." And you try to tell somebody there's 10 other events going on in this country, national level events that there's everybody gets kind of spread thin. But Columbus Good Guys is one of, if not their pinnacle event. Because that's where they hand out the hardware, man. It's the awards for the Street Machine of the Year and the Street Rod of the Year. And the Street Machine of the Year is like, these cars are over the top. I mean, these are a lot of times some of the higher level SEMA cars. There are a lot of cars that are debuted for that event. It's not like the Riddler Award where the car can't be seen anywhere else. But if you've got, a killer street machine, which kind of means like super high-end pro touring kind of stuff, the Street Machine of the Year award is one of the most prestigious awards there is, and that's where they all fight it out. And I'm pretty sure, I got to check and see, there used to be a driving component to that as well. Not just show and shine kind of thing. So
okay, yeah. I know they have an autocross there. Sorry, they have an autocross and they have a vintage drags there as well, which would be so cool to watch.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think looking at some of the cars that were competing this year, the winner, because it's already happened, I'm not letting the cat in a bag, but the winner was this yellow Camaro built by the Roadster Shop. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see this thing in person. It's a yellow '69 Camaro, and shame on me, but I forgot the name of the car because it kind of doesn't need one. It's that yellow car that the Roadster Shop built.
Yellow like, '69 Camaro.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that one." This car is so precise and so straight, and it's so tight the way it fits. It doesn't even make sense. And you and I have talked before. Yeah, you and I have talked before about some of the Roadster Shop creations that are like that, and this is one of them. And I think one of the best details on this car is the front bumper, because as you know, on a '69 Camaro, the chrome or the body color bumper, the Enduro bumper option, it kind of makes a smile on the bottom side of the grill opening, and it curves up on the sides, and at first glance, they never really fit right. They didn't fit right from the factory, and because it's such a complex shape, it's like really tricky to cut one up and make it fit right. And I think what these guys did, I think they just made the whole nose of the car over again and then cut the bumper out of that.
Oh wow!
There's like a credit card size slot that you can fit like a handful of frog hairs between the bumper and the body,
Oh my gosh.
And it's like they made that a separate piece just to say, it's just kind of a middle finger to everybody saying, look at how tight we can make this. And I saw the car at SEMA, and I barely got past that damn bumper. I was just like, this is insane. And they've got details on that thing. They have a dip in the roof that actually rear glass conforms to the roof shape. I mean, it's not a flat piece of glass; it's bent, and the body lines travel through the glass. I mean, it's off the scale. And again, you and I have discussed my standpoint on some of the cars like that. This to me is like a factory level concept car. It's so far distance from a muscle car, and it's very far distance from a pro touring car or something you'd see actually driving down the street, that my mind just kind of has a disconnect. I don't really understand it. It's like, oh my gosh. So
that's trippy. You have to throw a picture on that on the website.
I will.
On the V8 Facebook page.
Without a doubt, because it is it's out there. And then some of the other contenders, Ring Brothers had a blue 69 Camaro there also that is just as innovative as far as the style of it. There was a handful of really rock solid cars that were competing for Street Machine of the Year. But congratulations to the Roadster Shop guys, because that thing it just doesn't make sense. and then on the Street Rod of the Year side, so this is your pre-48 cars, your fat fendered stuff, your 32 Fords, that kind of deal. Alan Johnson and Johnson Hot Rods won with a George Poteet Ford that, again, it's everything the Roadster Shop car is, but just in a different era. It's the same level of execution and fit and thought and innovation. So those are huge selling points to go to that event, just to see these level of cars up close and in person. And it's definitely a goal that our shop aspires to, is to have a contender in that event. We've built some nice cars. Some of it is timing, to be able to bring the car out and get it there. But these are definitely, I'm going to guess that both of those were 7-figure builds or close to it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeesh. That's a good day's pay, my friend.
Yeah, it's a great day.
Yeah.
That's a day's pay, then count me in. Want that job. So, yeah.
Gosh, 7 figures. I mean, think of all the innovation and all the things you have to figure out. I mean, like body lines through glass. I mean, who does that?
Right.
Nobody. Until one shop, i.e. Roaster Shop, says, okay, we're going to figure this out. We're going to do this. And they do it.
Well, yeah. And I think
it's nuts.
What's so crazy about that is there's a freedom there to where shops like that have the resources and customers with the resources to just say, yeah, we're going to make that. And then you figure out how to do it next,
Right. Right.
One of the things I thought was pretty mind-bending about the Riddler winner this past year, the Cal Auto Designs 32 that those guys built. I think it was a 32, or 29 or 31. Again, forgive me. The car is so radically different from what it was that it's hard to easily identify. But the floor on this thing was CNC machined. This is not
really?
This is not a sheet metal floor in the car. It is a contoured, reliefed aluminum floor that was machined.
Whoa.
Right. Yeah. So who even thinks of that? To do that? Nobody. I can't tell you.
That's outrageous.
Right. If I had a room full of machines and programmers and a customer that said, I can pay for this, I don't think I'd walk in there and say, okay, guys, now we're going to do a floor.
Yeah. I mean, who thinks of that?
Right.
My gosh.
So
it boggles the mind. It really does. The cool thing about a lot of this innovation, not just looking at it and appreciating it, but some of this stuff trickles down to the regular people over time, where people were doing that first guy who did like flush mounted glass in a muscle car. Somebody thought of that, and now other shops can do that kind of thing too. It's like, oh, this guy, this is what he did, and that's a great idea. We'll do that too. Mm-hmm. So that works for everybody. I think it's great for the it's great for the buyer. It's good for the shop to learn that kind of skill and to offer that service. So,
yeah, I think you're right, because it becomes available to more people. The one-off stuff eventually becomes available to the masses, and I think it's so cool to see how technology has evolved to allow these manufacturing techniques to happen in a hot rod shop, and not just an assembly line manufacturing plant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for real.
It just takes the creativity to apply to it. So
yeah,
it's something else, and we've got a bunch of cool things in the works, and some pretty neat cars coming up with some higher level stuff. And to me, it's interesting, and please don't get upset. And I'm speaking to the world for what I'm about to say, because what I'm going to say is it's going to sound like I'm being just a jerk, but I'm not. But there really is almost a template for that level of innovative street machine of the year type car. And I'm certainly not saying that these are easy to do or that they are in any way not unique, but there are elements that they all seem to have currently. And it's like, okay, so if you have those elements, it helps to push the car into that direction. And the elements I'm talking about are, like you're saying, a lot of them have the flush glass and the hyper smooth finish and super razor crisp body lines and super tight gaps. Another thing we're seeing is, of course, the stance and the wheels. You got to have to compete there. You need a custom wheel for that car. It's not there's nothing off the shelf about the wheels. They're all made for those cars. So you need that. Then when you open the hood, generally it's a modern power plant with injection and everything else, but it's dipped in a satin type finish, and you've got closeout panels around the inner fenders and the firewall to where they've got reliefs either hammered into them or rolled into them or whatever, molded. So they've got these kind of organic shapes floating around. And then the interior needs to have, a look that either looks like a super high-end European concept car or something that you're going to find in a mansion in the cigar smoking room with rich, deep leather, that's sculpted, and you got to put the smoking jacket on and, and go sit in that. And because there are more people that can create these types of elements, we're seeing those same kind of elements applied to different cars, be it a 55 Nomad or a 69 Camaro or a pickup truck or whatever it is. But when your eye sees, oh, look at how smooth and straight, and the satin finishes, and the custom one-off wheels, and then that overblown kind of leather interior with a lot of rings. They like rings and mesh and the dimple dye, panels under the hood. Bam, there's your street machine of the year elements, right?
Sure.
So, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But recently I'm trying to investigate, okay, so what's next? Because the cool thing is most of these cars also perform because the suspensions are there, the engines are there. So they're hitting on all these different levels. They drive, they stop, they look awesome, they're comfortable, they're of a certain style. But, if you want to play the game, you got to bring something to the table. So what's the next thing that's going to wind everybody up?
Well, CNC machined floors, that's helping out.
Well, yeah, it does. But I didn't want my statement before to kind of cheapen that, to say, well, sure, all you need to do is paint under hood satin and roll some reliefs into this and make this, and then you got it, but because that's not what I'm saying. Yeah. So I guess for me, kind of a direction that I am really intrigued with is maybe it's not, and not to be a contrarian, but I'm fascinated with taking some of the new technology and applying it to the original stuff, right?
Right, yeah.
So right now there are guys who've built East Bay Muscle Cars did a 65 Riviera that was phenomenal. It was chocolate brown, and it had an LS motor that was disguised to look like an original nailhead. And it was green, and it had the air cleaner, and it had the valve covers. I mean, they really pulled it off. If you didn't, the giveaway was the front runner belt drive on the front. Everything else looked just like a nailhead 425 Buick.
Nice.
So now you got, a modern engine that plays the part. But in my mind, I'm thinking, well, why don't we build a modern nailhead? Why don't we get a nailhead and let's CNC machine the block to make sure that it's perfect. Let's do some oiling modifications. Let's design a roller cam retrofit. Let's do some exotic pistons that are coated with modern stuff. Let's do a CNC. Let's make some cylinder heads. Let's cast some and correct the valve geometry and make an intake manifold. And if GM, for whatever reason, was to build a nailhead today, what would that be? So when you open the hood, and sure, you could apply your satin finishes or make it look like, 1965 or whatever, but apply those things to see, because guys today, they're like, well, an LS motor, if you don't make 400 horsepower with an LS, it's probably not even running, because of the technology that went into designing that engine. But would a 425 Buick with that same design technology applied to it be just as cool, just as much, just as strong?
Yeah. Why couldn't it be? I mean, if you correct a lot of the shortcomings it had, all the compromises it had when it was originally produced, there's no reason why it couldn't be just as effective as any modern LS.
Right.
And just as versatile as far as forced induction is concerned as well.
Right, and let's do a supercharger that has an appearance of something that would have been back in the day, but the functionality. And then, to me, I think you could have a whole row of cars that had the panels and the satins and the LSs, but you open the hood on that, and then it's like, okay, this guy showed up with something,
Yeah, now that's different.
Right. And it translates to all of them. The Pontiac world, I mean, now, today, there's a couple of guys making aluminum blocks and things for big Pontiacs. Yeah. But correct me if I'm wrong, those are mostly like really high performance, big inch kind of stuff, right? Yeah.
If you're buying an aluminum Pontiac block, you're in the 500 inch category. Up to over 1,000 horsepower it can handle. And what's great about those blocks is it does just what you're talking about. It fixes a lot of the weaknesses that the original cast blocks had. Like if you look in a Pontiac lifter valley, it's like Swiss cheese because hardly anything is connected in there. It's all solid all the way down from the front to back, and it's strong, and it has thicker mains and better oil passages, better cooling. So it's just an all around better, stronger piece. And
have you seen any of those?
I'd love to have one.
Yeah, no kidding. have you seen any of those done in a street driving, non-race application?
Not an aluminum block. I haven't. Not an aftermarket aluminum block, or even the aftermarket cast iron blocks. I haven't seen.
Yeah, those
mostly just aftermarket heads is what you see.
And those cast iron blocks are nice too. They're an O-ring block with a screw and freeze plug and all that jazz.
Right.
Cross bolts. Yeah.
Sure.
Imagine one of those in a '69 GTO or something.
How about a 67 GTO? That's what I'd like to see one in.
A gold one, maybe.
Bang, bang. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But,
Hey, speaking of GTOs, I made a little bit of progress on that.
Really?
I got the engine bay all painted up nice and pretty.
That's right.
In preparation for my engine coming home one of these days.
That is correct. Yeah. So I remember you posting some pictures on one of the Pontiac groups on the Facebook about that process, and it looked awesome.
Yeah, it's, what? I didn't think it was going to turn out as nice as it did, but it turned out fairly well for a guy with an amateur painter with a rattle can. It turned out not too bad. I mean, your satin finish covers a lot of sins.
Well, yeah, and it looks right. It's what it's kind of supposed to have.
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
Exactly. All right. So, in your case, your engine's out. It's at the machinist. So the car's sitting there with its mouth gaping wide open. So it was
Yeah.
great that you decided to take the opportunity while it was out,
Yeah.
to get something
Yeah,
else
for
done. Sure. Do you have any tips on that experience that would be helpful to somebody who's going to do an engine bay resto with the engine yanked?
Just make sure your masking is thorough, and I got a tip from you to mask off like your brake lines and fuel lines or AC stuff with tinfoil, and it covers real fast and it comes off real easy, and it masks the lines nicely. So that was a great tip. It saved me a lot of time. Appreciate that.
Yeah, glad that worked out for you, because we we do that all the time in the shop. When you got an odd shaped thing, you can just crunch it around. You don't have to burn tape or any of that stuff. So how did you clean everything in the paint prep?
I hosed it all down with sprayed it with degreaser and let it sit for a little while, and then my buddy Randy came by with a pressure washer, and then we pressure washed it, and then made sure all the grease was out and dried it, and I masked everything off and shot it.
Did you have any paint adhesion problems anywhere where it wasn't sticking or was still greasy or whatever?
No, no problems at all.
Awesome.
Yeah, great. And you gave me the tip of that paint from Ace that has the rotatable nozzle.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
So you can change the spray pattern depending on where you're spraying it, and that was huge too. That helped out quite a bit.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, it laid down nice. It dries fast. And no problems with it popping back up. And because my buddy was telling me, just be careful, because it might, if you spray your next coat on there, it might lift. But nothing lifted. I put 3 coats on there, and it's great.
Awesome.
So
well, good. That's fantastic.
Go me.
Yeah, that's going to make that engine look killer. So your goal is kind of a fairly stock appearance for the most part.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been contemplating doing that on. Well, either on the Buick or I'm not even going to go there, but it needs to happen. I'm in this debate. It's like, the car, in my case, this 70 Buick I have, it now has 32,000 miles on it because I've been driving it.
And it's clapped out.
Well, it's a roach. I mean, it's got some issues, and but it's not like all the paint's falling off, and it doesn't really offend me because I get it. It's like, well, this is still all original stuff, so do you do anything with it or not? It's this struggle that I have, and the ridiculous thing about it is the car is never really going to be worth anything. So it's not like that's an original L88 Corvette or something. So if I did what you did, and even if I masked off the whole motor and rattle can the whole thing, there's not a person in the world that's going to go, oh, yeah, you ruined that car because it's not original paint in there anymore. Nobody cares. But to me, I guess I have so much respect for those original finishes and coatings that it's like, yeah, I kind of want to leave it. But then am I disrespecting the car by letting it go out in public with surface rust and, other crap on it, that it deserves to be, have a new coat of makeup on it. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, you got to look hard to find a lot of bad things on that car. Yeah, it's got some hail dings on it, but overall that's a nice looking survivor car. I mean, I wouldn't be ashamed to drive it anywhere.
Well, and no, it's not that I'm I'm ashamed to drive it anywhere. It's just this kind of internal battle. I mean, I like it the way it is, and I know for a fact what it's going to take. If I'm going to paint this car, it's going to be nice. It has to be. The same way you think. You're not going to do it. The outside of the car, you want the gaps to be right. You want the fit.
Yeah.
And if I ever did repaint this car, the color that's on it now is a red that was kind of a metallic cranberry red almost. Today I would do one of the modern tri-coat, super vivid, same color but much deeper looking, and it would it would look awesome.
That would look sharp.
But because I know what it takes to do that, then I step back and go, yeah, this ain't so bad. I'm just...
I can live with this a little bit longer.
Yeah, I don't think I really need to go down, because I don't want to take it apart, and I don't want to, have the thing be out of commission, for 6 months or whatever, because I don't have a lot of time to do this stuff. So it'd be nights and weekends, and I unfortunately I don't have the financial resources to hire my own shop and say, you guys do it, which I would love to do, because I know our crew would just make the thing insane. But I'm too busy putting money into the business instead of spending it in the business. And you're right, that survivor term is fitting, because this thing's been there, and it's been through a lot, and it's all still there.
Yeah. Even the date-coated belts.
Yeah, right. I still got
that
those.
You had.
Yeah, the steering belt. I bought a new steering belt, and it squeaked just as bad as the old one, and I put the old one back on. So that is the 1970 steering belt on there right now.
Right on.
And last week I took the car out, and I was going to go to I don't know, get lunch or something, and I made it about a mile from my house, and it went boom. And then it just it just coasted to a stop, and I went, "What the heck just happened here?" Right? And I could smell coolant, and I actually shot video when it happened, and I'll put the link on the on our V8 radio website page for this episode. I opened the hood, and there's coolant everywhere. I mean, just the whole thing is sprayed in coolant, but every hose is intact. The radiator cap is on. The car's not that hot. It's been driven a mile. I'm like, what the heck is going on here, right? So I started poking around, and by squeezing the upper radiator hose and putting some pressure on it, these 455 Buick engines have a little gooseneck hose that goes from the water pump to the intake manifold. And when you squeeze the top hose, it kind of peed out of that little hose. That little hose it punctured, it
just gave it up.
It burst, yeah. And
sure.
The good thing was Kelly was home, so she came and kind of rescued me, which really all I needed was a better pair of pliers, because the car has all of its original spring clamps on it, except for a couple of screw clamps. And those spring clamps suck. Wow. They're impossible to get off. So I looped out the heater core and was able to get back on the road just by looping out the heater core and topping off the coolant and driving it home. And the reason why it died is because that hose that burst sprayed coolant into my distributor, and it knocked out my Pertronics unit, which luckily Kelly had brought me a can of compressed air, that you dust off computers with. Yeah, and I was able to just kind of dry that out, and it started right up.
That's right. But that distributor's up front on that engine, right?
Correct. Yeah, it shot right at it. So the interesting thing, though, is that hose that blew is red, because that was put on in 1970.
Good Lord.
And it's like, of course, you jerk. What are you driving around with, a 47-year-old radiator hose on your car?
It's a Survivor. I have to.
See what the problem is here?
Yeah. Oh, wow. No, you get a pass for consumables and soft parts, so change everything.
And even when this thing had failed, that hose is old and crotchety enough to where it visibly didn't look like it failed. Like I said, I had to really squeeze that thing to find that leak.
Really? That's trippy.
So the video of that day is, I'll put that up, because it was kind of funny. I made it home.
Good.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah. All right. Well, in this profoundly okay episode, half the show was the trivia question, and now I'm curious to know if I'm right.
All right, I asked you, what year did Chrysler buy AMC? And Kevin said 1983?
Yes,
is that correct?
That's what I said. I don't know if it's correct or not, but that's what I said.
Well, I know if it's correct, and it is not.
It is not.
It is not. It is 1987. Chrysler bought AMC.
Holy mackerel. So it was after the bailout.
Yeah, must have been.
Right? Because the K car was the big bailout car. So Chrysler got the government bailout in 81, 82.
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around that. And AMC was AMC Renault, and they were making the Renault Encore. Remember that fine piece of machinery?
Oh, anything Renault is a fine piece of machinery. My wife Jenny, her first car was a Renault Alliance.
That was the other one. Yes.
Yeah, and that was as big a pile as you can imagine it would be.
Well, they also had the fine Le Car.
Oh yes, the Le Car.
And the Fuego. Remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
The Renault Fuego.
Yes. That was Fuego, which is French for pile, I think.
Indeed it is.
You want another head trip is look one of those things up online, and it's just as weird today as it was then. So
I will do that.
Yeah. All right, so I lose. And in your case, where did the Shelby GT350 get its name?
Yeah.
And it's funny because as we're talking about this, I think this might have been a trivia question on an earlier episode.
Do you think so?
I think I might have asked you this already. I don't know.
Nah.
Well, you said
you probably could have.
350 steps from the office, Shelby's office, to a shop.
Yeah.
So they just kind of went, let's call it that. And you are basically correct, sir. Congratulations.
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa. Yes. Yes. Yes.
That
I win. Kevin loses. I win.
Completely. Yeah. You can run around a neighborhood with that one.
Oh, I am. I'm calling my mom right
now. Bring her down into this quagmire too. Basically, I'm not sure if it was steps or feet, but yeah, they were trying to come up with a name for the car, and somebody casually mentioned that it was 350. I guess Shelby asked and said, how far away is the shop? And somebody said, I don't know, 350 feet. And he said, call it the GT350. If it's a good car, the name won't matter. And if it's a bad car, the name ain't going to fix it.
Yeah, that's good. It's good advice.
So he really thought it wasn't about the name. And it turns out that it's a tremendously awesome car. So we still have them today.
Yes, we do.
And the sidebar.
So then where did the GT500 come from?
Yeah, so that's the sidebar. And the 500 was the big block version. Mm-hmm. And the story that I've heard on that side is that your Fords had 427s, your Chrysler had a 426, your Chevrolet products had a 427 at the time, and Shelby just wanted a bigger number. So he just went right to 500, and just there it was.
Okay.
Because it's got nothing to do with like the Galaxy 500, which was stemmed from a NASCAR race, 500-mile race, 500-lap, 500-mile race. Nothing to do with that. This was purely just make it bigger and badder than those others. And they are in many ways. The first couple anyway, definitely. Well, right on, man. So now I got to think back. I got to put some pictures up of some AMC products. What else? I have to go back and listen to the tape and make sure I get the link to the video of the cartoons. And
video, yeah.
Yeah.
And the video of you blowing up your coolant hose?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
All
right. Be able to relive the whole thing over again.
Sweet.
Yes. And that's what it's all about here. So
it is. Yeah. It is.
Well, listen, this was fun. Like I said, my mind is blown. I appreciate that.
Oh, you bet, man. Happy to do my part.
Yeah, right. So thanks for hanging with us for another episode of V8 Radio. If you like this kind of stuff, there's more on the website at v8radio.com. Also our V8 TV website for the video side of things. Of course, V8 TV airs in, I think, 72 markets around the country at this point on the Tough TV network, the Action Channel, and the Revin Channel. And Revin's supposed to have some pretty cool big announcements. They've got some new brass over there doing some new stuff, so that'll be cool. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that jazz. We're there. You can subscribe to this show on iTunes, the TuneIn Radio app, or Google Play, or just go right to V8 Radio and listen manually, if you will. And we started doing a couple things recently on the Facebook page and on the V8 TV show site. Our Minute to Win It live videos, which...
I like those Minute Doing It live videos.
Yeah, I'm glad you do. They're normally not a minute, and there's very little winning.
Well, the name is catchy.
Yeah. But that's just kind of some kind of thing that happens in the shop that deserves to be discussed real quick. So we'll be doing more of those, and you can catch more of our nonsense there. So again, man, it was a blast, and we will see you next time on V8 Radio.